Hello, everybody, and welcome to Instrumental Breakthroughs podcast, the podcast that looks at the psychedelic origin stories of your favorite creative superheroes. I'm your host, Daniel of Tam Integration. Tam Integration is a community of people who are deeply interested in transformation, psychedelics, meditation, and the like. We offer events like this, a lot of preparation, integration, coaching all around the world. I'd like to thank our co-producers, Dead Headland. You're probably watching this right now on Dead Headland, the most happening place on earth, where you can watch live music streamed several times daily. And of course, big thank you to Livestream Remote, who's running our tech. I'm excited to talk to our next guest, who I first met in about 2012 when I learned that he did the mural of my friend's store, Jammin' on Haight, in Haight-Ashbury district. It was the most colorful store at the time, and a lot of people consider it as being responsible for the renaissance of building painting and public art and in the area. It really sort of made the other artists or the other stores in the area sort of up their game. And as I dove into Xavi's work, I learned that he was painting at festivals for years all across America, that he is responsible for brilliant and gorgeous murals all around the world. I actually ran into one of his murals in Quito one day, Ecuador, and that was super fun.
Saw that?
And yeah, I sent you a picture of me sort of in front of that mural. I made the driver stop.
Oh boy, wow. That was 7 years ago, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, welcome to the podcast, Xavi. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
And so, as I mentioned, the theme of the show is psychedelic origin stories of your favorite creative superheroes. And today, that superhero is you.
Woohoo!
So I was wondering if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing some of the moments that were pivotal and kind of made you the grand genius that we're beholding with eyes of great love today.
Oh man. Well, let's see. Well, I guess there would be two different kind of segments to that come to mind. One in the area of actual art and drawing, but then in the kind of in the family life, in my home growing up, I would say my dad had a huge influence on teaching me about psychedelics from a very early age.
Mm-hmm.
And because he was raised Catholic in Washington D.C. and like really strict and went to all boys schools. And then in the 60s, he kind of discovered psychedelics through acid, mushrooms, and mescaline. And he actually underwent a kind of spiritual transformation that he never, he never saw that coming. He was basically atheist by age 18, and the psychedelics really transformed him and gave him a spiritual experience of like oneness with the universe and God and everything. And so he told me about that experience growing up, and I was extremely fascinated by this thing that he called the oneness. And he would explain to me that like everything is interconnected, and the patterns of nature are like they're like the actual skin of this kind of godlike energy that runs through life. And I just thought that was really neat. And that was kind of like my star that kept me on track growing up. And he told me, psychedelics are really serious. They're not to play around with. They're not party candy. He said, this is not candy. This is really serious stuff. And so I kind of was raised with that reverence for it. And so, and he was into classic rock. So we always had like Beatles and Rolling Stones and Cream and Eric Clapton, like, you know, all his records were in the living room while I was growing up. So I mean, I grew up with him playing classic rock. And so I kind of was looking at psychedelic rock art growing up, and that had a huge influence on me. I just thought it was so cool. So like backtrack to when I was really little, that TV show Commander Mark, Secret City. It was like on public I can't remember what channel it was on, but there was this art teacher guy who had a TV show called Secret City, and he was wearing a spacesuit. The studio looked like you're in outer space, and he had this big drawing board, and he would teach kids how to draw and teach you the fundamentals of drawing, how to do 3D shapes, how to do shading, perspective, all those kind of fundamentals. And so I was like heavily obsessed with drawing by third grade. From third grade on, I would say I was full blown obsessed in drawing 24/7. So by the time so the type of drawing that worked for me was drawing from the imagination. I found I had more going on just in my imagination and drawing whatever things I could think of than looking at something and trying to draw things from the real world. I kind of realized I don't really have an interest in drawing things from this world. I'm interested in drawing things from other worlds that don't exist here so I can bring them into existence. So yeah, and
you wanted to draw the Secret City.
Yeah. It just was kind of automatic, I wasn't really aware. That's just where my tendency leaned towards. Yeah. So then, by high school, I had like a full-blown fascination with psychedelic art, but I wasn't taking psychedelic drugs. I just was really into it, and as far as for me, I could just imagine psychedelic states and just start painting them, and that worked for me because honestly, I was a bit terrified of psychedelics, rightfully so, based on, my dad would, give me these pretty intense monologues about psychedelics. And I was just like, oh my God, wow. And so, yeah.
So did you ever, face that fear and cross that threshold?
I did, yeah. When I was 16, I told my dad I was going to try LSD once. So I did it, and it was a really weird experience. I don't think the tab that I had was particularly high quality acid. So I did it once, but it was a really nice day. And I sat in the driveway all day long and did my art homework because it was a Sunday. So I had to turn in my art homework that following Monday. So I set up a still life of garden tools and like a wagon, and it was kind of in my yard. And as it started working, I noticed all the grass in the yard became every blade of grass was a little fairy with a face, and they were waking up and stretching their arms and yawning. And I thought, wow, that's pretty specific and like high res, and the neighbor's wall was lizard skeletons swimming around the wall. And I was just kind of checking this out, and feeling really like I was turning into an animal. Yeah, I sat in the driveway and fixated on this still life homework, and I had colored pencils and magic markers, and I basically spent hours totally locked into this 18 by 24 inch sketchbook pad of drawing this still life. And it started off pretty normal looking, but then the whole thing started getting really wavy and liquidy. and I could tell what was happening, I thought, oh, this is pretty cool, because it took away any inhibitions I had, and became a really fluid and fun. So you can kind of tell that I was tripping when you look at the final thing. But by the end of the day, like that night, I felt pretty crappy. And the next day I felt kind of hungover for a little while, you know, and weird. Everyone looked kind of weird. And I actually never took acid again after that. That was the one time I ever did it, was when I was 16. And that would have been, I don't know, 92 or 93. And then I didn't do it again until 2012. I did it. Yeah.
So before we get to 2012, I am curious about the takeaways that you brought with you from, you know, okay, I don't want to do that again, was there, and it made people look weird, but how did it influence your art moving forward?
I would say it didn't really influence my art moving forward, because my art seems to exist in its own kind of separate dimension in myself. But psychedelics, particularly that one, affected me personally, because it taught me a lesson that I didn't know up to that point, which was it showed me that it's really important to treat people with kindness and respect. And I hadn't specifically gotten that download. You know, I'm a 16-year-old kid, but you know, I did, as the medicine was coming on, I was seeing images of like people in school, that, you know, people that I was, you know, skaters or other artists that I would make fun of. And I just thought, oh wow, it's not cool to like be uncool to people. You know? And so that was a big lesson. Yeah. But as far as plant medicines influencing creativity, I would say marijuana is the influencer of my creativity, not acid and mushrooms. The acid and mushrooms is so deeply kind of personal that it almost isn't even about art. Whereas marijuana, when I kind of started getting into that in high school, that had a huge effect on my creative process.
Awesome. Well, let's sing those praises for a moment.
Sure.
We were talking before we got on camera about the difference between the kind of nuts and bolts work of, you know, producing these large scale pieces of art. People don't know you. A lot of your art is enormous, you know, covering buildings and shipping containers and the like. But then you said that there's this other part which is the inspiration part, where you're sort of figuring out, envisioning it. And so I'm curious how cannabis plays roles in each of those.
Mm-hmm. I would say it connects me into that. I mean, I don't necessarily use it all the time when I'm kind of creating, but over the past 25 years, yeah, there's been a lot of it, because that combined with music definitely helps get me into that magical, mystical place where I'm in a more internal, trippy place than if I was just sober, you know, and totally mundane consciousness.
Can we go one level deeper with that?
Let's see. Yeah, I think so. So I guess kind of the place where that really kind of happened for me was, I would say music was an integral part of it, because the sort of visual quality of my work in terms of vibrating shapes, repeating patterns.
Mm-hmm.
I think marijuana is what actually opened me up to those visual patternings through music. So, and it happened on the dance floor at raves and
Hmm.
parties. Yeah, I would, it it raves. I was like a big raver, and electronic dance music was a big part of my thing. And so, I mean, I would just, smoke a joint with my friends, hit the dance
Hmm.
floor, and I'm dancing for hours with my eyes closed. And the that's where I first started seeing this kind of unbelievable stuff. I couldn't,
Right.
and so I realized this is what my art is about for sure. And so from that kind of point on, my work became about visualizing this musical synesthetic total experience I was happening, that I was I was even trying to visualize taste. And it's like this multidimensional sensation that is hard to put into words and art. So that's why it's really kind of good fodder for art, because you can continuously explore it, and you never feel like you fully grasp it. you
Right.
know
Right. Right. So we're really getting a peek inside your mind. We're really getting to see synesthesia in action.
yeah, it was on the dance floor. There was weed involved, and
Hmm.
I got so high just from smoking a joint that I thought I'm as high as I could possibly be right now. Like, I don't even want to be any higher than this. So it was a good point where I could stay grounded on earth, but also be super duper far out. And that
Right.
really worked well for me, especially in a situation where you're out at a big musical event, you
Hmm.
know. So it's not as safe as being on your bed in your home, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Safe enough. Most of those people are pretty nice.
yeah. It was good to have that. Pot was like a happy medium, a happy psychedelic medium for me, not too
Sure.
much. Yeah.
Sure. And I like this idea of continually trying to grasp for it,
Hmm.
because really good music has that sense. Whereas art, you can kind of sit and look at it and hang out with it for a while. Music is so fleeting,
Hmm.
and we catch ourselves. I mean, I catch myself listening to the same song, several times, just for like one moment, just for like one transcendent moment within that song. You're like, I gotta hear that again. And it's like, you can't be with it forever. It's so transitory.
Hmm. Yeah, the beauty is fleeting. Uh, that's an interesting one.
Right. Because on one level, people say that truth is beauty and then also truth is eternal. But at the same time, trying to touch that as a human has its challenges.
Hmm. Yeah.
Which brings us, so what are some of the things that you wrestle with inside yourself to try and, make that happen, to take that thing that is so fleeting and create it as something that will last for a long time?
I think it's about kind of being in a pure place in your heart, um, so that what comes out really really is your vulnerable self
Hmm.
coming out. And when you feel a certain you can feel the joy come through when something's working. The thing you're creating is saying yes, yes,
Hmm.
keep bringing me out in this way. And you're going, okay, I hear you, we're going to do this. It's like a sort of like a joyful parent child relationship. That's
Hmm.
how it feels to me. It feels like these kind of creative, like, blossoms that come out, they have their own life and their own will to live, and I'm trying to give them whatever conditions they need to exist in the way that they want to.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of listening involved when I'm doing it. It's like, um, yeah, it does get to like this really telepathic kind of sensitive place where I feel like I'm in communication with something else.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I like this idea. This comes up in the podcast a lot, the idea of receiving or channeling, like creating yourself, like working on yourself, you said, to be in a vulnerable, pure place, to, figure out a way to let the art come through.
Mhm.
And one of the things you also said is, this joyful place, a lot of your work really does exude and express joy, seemingly so. And, the colors are bright and the lines are bold. And I'm wondering to what extent, you know, um, darker, more challenging emotions come through. Like, do you wrestle with those on canvas?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Um, those type of things are the dark stuff is inside of me,
Hmm.
same as everyone else. But the art for me is like the medicine and the therapy
Hmm.
for that is the antidote to all that for me.
Hmm.
So doing art is what keeps me sane and and feeds me joy.
Right.
And the art as an object, I wouldn't be presenting my dark matter to the world in that way, because that's not the service I want it to provide. Like, I want to
Right.
be giving the world something that would also be healing, and therapeutic in some way, and to bring joy. Like, for me, the art is really a joy and love generating machine, and that's what I use it for. So yeah, I've never had any kind of desire to be doing dark things in my work.
Right.
Yeah. And and that kind of connects into the visionary art ethos, which is art as medicine. And
Mm.
you know
So I love this. So you said visionary art ethos as if it's written down somewhere.
well, if you're in the, I mean, it is in all of Alex Gray's books.
Right.
Yeah. he
Sure.
he's really who helped define that and
Yeah.
kind of be a leader for us younger generation.
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how thrilled I was. Well, first to find his stuff, and a lot of my LSD journeys were spent in front of sacred mirrors, the book Sacred Mirrors. And, when I finally got to go to Cosm in Chelsea, I was blown away. But, also to discover, flipping through the little books that he made, which always featured other artists in it. I was like, oh, he's not alone.
Yeah, the
It was,
Cosmic Journal.
yeah, the Cosm Journal.
Mhm.
Yeah, had like other people's work in it. And it sort of gives you a jumping off point to see who else is doing the work.
Mhm.
It was brilliant, brilliant stuff. But I would love to talk more about the ethos
Mhm.
and as you understand it and as you embody it. So one is art as medicine, which obviously, yes.
Yeah, yeah, or art for, I guess I like to think of it as art as a therapeutic tool.
Hmm.
Yeah, something that feels good, something that brings joy and kind of increases the positive energy in whatever space it's in. And so these kind of really large scale public projects I find are a great way to bring that huge amount of joy into a public space where it can just reverberate.
Right. Totally different than like Richard Serra.
Hmm.
I just remember reading the article, they gave Richard Serra a public space and he basically put a big metal wall in the middle of it,
Hmm.
which sort of ruined the fun of everybody who was using the space. And there were court cases to, try and take it down, You know, he was promised he was going to do it for free if they promised he could keep it up forever.
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I
like
always,
that too, because you can't really define what is going to work for everyone. That's
mhm,
that's the thing. Artists need to have total creative freedom to express their ideas.
right. I kind of always liked you made me think of a phrase that I really like, that art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm more on the comfort the disturbed end of that spectrum.
right,
Because my internal world since I was an infant has been highly disturbing, and I've been kind of subjected to mental internal forces
right.
that can be totally overwhelming and terrifying at times. And this is
Yeah,
since infancy. And so creating these kind of images of total harmony and cohesiveness and beauty is very kind of grounding and calming for me.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I tend towards comforting the disturbed myself. There are other people who do the other stuff better.
Yeah.
So fast forward to 2012,
Hmm.
and there you are with another hit of acid or drop of liquid or,
It was a drop of the good stuff,
mhm,
super duper top of the line, best in the whole world level stuff, because by this point I have good friends. I have high friends in high places.
you knew a guy, sure.
Right. And so, yeah, I was on the beach in Costa Rica, and I took a drop and then had an absolutely fantastic day. Not one bit of negativity. It was totally amazing. And I thought, wow, this is so much more clear headed than I was expecting.
Hmm.
It just felt like my day got increasingly clarified throughout
Right.
the day. And yeah, I was standing on a rock overlooking the ocean, and I felt like I felt like I was at the climax of a anime cartoon, and I was the main character, and everything like was victorious. It was sunny and sparkly, and yeah,
Hmm.
I just could
You
hear like the triumphant music playing, and it was pretty great.
right on. Have we seen a piece of art that reflects that?
Mm, no, I don't really do specific art pieces in that way.
Okay.
Um, it's like my work is just already so like fundamentally psychedelic that
Right.
it doesn't kind of specifically affect it in that way.
Sure.
But what it does is it opens my heart and mind up to a more relaxed, kind of comfortable, uninhibited place, so that when I do sit down to make work, it's
Hmm.
coming out just effortlessly, and you can feel that. That's when something's really working.
Right. So
Yeah.
this idea of,
I don't illustrate my psychedelic experiences, but
sure.
the effect they have in me, helps me in just working.
Right. I mean, I do love that we're naming inhibition, because actually I in my mind, I picture you as on one of the less inhibited people that I know for whatever reason. It might have been the shorts. Um, but what would you say to people who are also kind of challenge who might be listening, who are challenged by feeling inhibited, that they feel like they have something to share, they want to get vulnerable, they're having tough time being vulnerable, being uninhibited, and like offering their gifts to the world?
I think it. I think for artists in that place, because as artists we've all been there, and we all
Hmm.
have our sort of fears that our work isn't good enough, our
Hmm.
ideas aren't brilliant enough, and why would anybody care about this thing that we're making? And then it's very easy to look at other artists who we admire and say, oh, well, that artist is so awesome. Why can't I be like them, or they're better than me? And then you start comparing yourself to other artists. And that is a tragedy right there, because your strength as an artist lies in the fact that there is no other you. Your individual uniqueness is your power as an artist, and that is already yours. You don't have to go anywhere to get that. So the trick is to tap into that and not look at what other artists are doing, not worry about what they're doing, how awesome they are, or comparing yourself to them. You really have to learn to value your own unique self, and let that come out. And that, you know, back to what I said about listening to that voice inside you, there is something unique that wants to come out, and it might take years to develop, but you have to listen to it. You can't try and make your work like you have to avoid the urge to emulate. The urge to emulate, you know.
Right. Can you say a little bit more about, can we go into like greater granular detail around listening?
Yeah, I guess that the only thing that comes up for me with that is when you're making something and something doesn't feel right, that's your cue to to try something else.
Right.
You know, I don't know, for me, I have to work for long hours, for days on end, before that voice even starts to come online.
Right.
Because there's a big warm-up stage where I'm just kind of going through the motions of what I'm used to doing. But at a certain point, after many hours of, you know, when you start to get exhausted is when it starts talking back to you and telling you what it wants. But your own ego and kind of, you know, regular kind of processes have to get broken down a bit before it can take over.
Right.
Yeah.
You remind me, I think, of something Isaac Asimov said. He said, I was a terrible writer, and then I wrote every day, all morning, every day. And I think that it realized that I was going to write either way, so it might as well give me something good.
Exactly. Yeah, you really have to exhaust yourself physically and mentally before anything good starts happening, or at least that's been my experience.
Right.
Yeah, otherwise you're really in a surface ego level trying to draw. You're probably trying to impress people in that state of what you're doing. You're going, oh my God, I hope this is really good. That was so cool, that line that I just draw. Man, that was great. You know, and it's actually not that great. And then yeah, so I would say for me it's at least 30 hours before I start to, you know, get real with it.
Right.
Yeah. And then it starts happening really fast. It starts happening really fast and fluid, and it's coming out, it's coming out like a fountain. And then it gets really sort of, it can get really fast and loose and messy, and everything gets out there. And then hours and hours of that happen. You're not even really, you're totally not worried about it. It's, you know, you get into this different kind of mad scientist mind state. And then once the session is over, you have all this raw power content that you can then go back and refine and master over the following days and weeks. And I think it may be similar with musicians, of having a really powerful session, and then you go back and you refine and master everything and clean it up and make little changes. And it's in the post-production phase of my work. Once I get the thing out, that post-production phase is where a lot of the finer listening comes in, because you're making more subtle aesthetic decisions at that point. And that's kind of really good creative territory in there, because it's not as wild and raw. It's like that's when you're using more of your kind of I guess logical, like, mind to make really calculated visual decisions. And then it becomes like you have all the kids, they're all in the playground, and now you have to orchestrate all of them from going for a bunch of wild yelling kids, and you got to get them all synchronized and everyone working together so that everything is harmonious and each individual part of the composition is happy, and no one feels like anyone's stepping on anyone's toes. No one part of the piece can be dominating in any way. Every element of the piece, every layer, every color shape has to be on this totally cooperative level, so everything harmonizes as one perfect kind of symphony when it's done.
That is such a fun metaphor. So there's an aspect of conducting. You're then conducting the village, the vision. And I really like that, because one of the things that you said also for people is that they have to value themselves, resist the urge to emulate and value yourself. And it seems like what the self needs is time for that to emerge. Is like long stretches of unhurried time.
Yeah, that's a beautiful place to be. That's where you want to be as an artist, is just working and working and working. And it's not something to take for granted either. Even if you are a beginner artist, you don't consider yourself a great artist, if you're spending long hours daily and weekly working on your art, that is something really great.
Right.
The fact that you're doing that is amazing, because the flip side, which would be to just be not making anything at all, would be even worse,
Right.
So it's like you have to at least appreciate yourself for, putting in the effort.
Well, there's almost like a monastic quality. One of my yoga teachers once, congratulated us for showing up for class and said, every time you show up to practice, which is of course, a practice that means a lot of things on many levels, every time you show up, you're renouncing something else. It's like, you're renouncing watching television, you're renouncing eating terrible food, you've chosen this over that. And
Yeah.
that's huge in a world that is, vying for your attention to be spent on insipid things.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like, even a master artist sitting around doing nothing isn't as cool as a complete beginner who's totally working.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, are you working on anything interesting right now?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm working on a few different mural projects. Main one is the Jammin fam, Ben Jammin and Jeremy. They opened up their Las Vegas store.
Sure.
And so they asked me to paint it. So
Oh, great.
I'm going to work on a new big crazy psychedelic temple for the arts district in Las Vegas.
That's fantastic. Right, because, well, the one in SF is so wonderful. And then, the Vegas store opened, and I believe mostly they had tapestries, out front. They were decorating it as best they can. I'm glad that is getting an upgrade for sure. Which I was looking at, you said there was an interesting story around, you did a school, for kids, which, I mean, this, you can go, if you're listening, you can go to xaviart.com. That'll definitely be in the show notes, and kind of see this school environment that these children are getting. And then everybody out there can compare it to the school environment you had when you were a kid.
Yeah, so yeah, it's here in Southern Oregon. I'm in Ashland, Oregon right now, and there's a public charter school in the next city up, Medford. And the founder of that school is a really neat guy and a visionary guy, big thinker. And, interestingly, he threw concerts in the gymnasium to raise funds for the school. I mean, he's had Ziggy Marley play. I mean, he's a really neat guy. And through a friend of mine, I found out they were interested in having a mural at the school. And so I went and met with the founder, and I saw how kind of amazing the architecture, or the bones of the building is a lot of big geometric shapes that interlock. And I said, well, why don't we just paint the whole entire building and make a big statement? So the school is called Kids Unlimited. It's a charter school, and it mainly serves the poorest families in the valley, mostly Latino families. It's 95% Latino. And so these families, most of them wouldn't really have access to fantastic schools. So the Kids Unlimited is providing them with an incredible school experience for the kids. And they offer 3 organic meals a day from the kitchen and staff, which is pretty amazing. And breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the kids. And they built an extra gymnasium and soccer field, so now they have team sports there. And these kids wouldn't be getting this otherwise. So they're doing a huge service in the community. And I thought, well, why don't we make the whole school into this shining light and let everybody know what's going on here and really bring some attention to the place? And they thought that was a great idea, so we went ahead and did it.
And so when you think of art as medicine, what sort of medicine or healing or, service are we providing to kids by creating an environment like that?
Well, I think being in an environment that feels kind of highly developed and aesthetically beautiful just brings people to a higher level, and so I basically wanted to kind of make the school in terms of design, I wanted to make it as sophisticated as possible so that the kids would have this sort of like advanced visual medium that they were existing in, and then that would have a subtle effect. And so I kind of incorporate minimalist design thinking so that the work can be in the background and not kind of in your face, but also powerful enough that you notice it. Yeah.
It's really cute. I just went back and looked at it a little bit. It's really adorable.
Yeah, there's 2 schools, the main school and then the preschool, which is the pre-kindergarten school. And I love the idea of creating space for children of that age, because you get to make the work really super gentle and simple, and but I also wanted to kind of push the standard a bit so that it's not just squares and circles and polka dots and stripes. I wanted to use
Mm-hmm.
more abstract shapes based in nature's algorithms.
Right. So, I'm looking at this and it just makes me wonder, if there was another kind of building, what is on your bucket list of buildings?
Buildings, well, buildings that aren't going to be uh, something that isn't going to be destroyed
Mm-hmm.
is on my bucket list. I'm kind of interested in painting things in places where they're not going to be destroyed, because I've had a lot of my work destroyed. Children's daycare center, that's kind of bucket list level stuff for me,
Mm-hmm.
because it's, their imaginations are so open that to bring them into another world, or to bring viewers into another world, is like the ultimate treat.
Right.
And to successfully do that is like connecting two universes, ours with this other fantasy universe that everyone's trying to connect to. And so just to have an effect on kids at that age, to me, is the most exciting.
Right.
A playground. Well, for me, it's not actual, it's more than just a mural, because I kind of enjoy working in 3D.
Right.
And so to kind of be a part of a big public playground project would be pretty fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's getting into architecture. So you'd have to be working with architects and city planners to get to that level. But, it'd be like having, permanent Burning Man installation type stuff.
Right.
Yeah, that's
It's
really
almost like sort of, I guess the closest we're coming to that really is like Meow Wolf a lot of the
exactly.
time.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
what I'm saying, it's not going to be destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you put so much work into something, it sucks to have it destroyed. And murals, by their nature, are temporary, and so the beauty is fleeting with them.
Right. Well, they're temporary. Well, I mean, it seems like some of this stuff is going to last a while.
I do my best to make things last as long as possible by using,
Mm-hmm.
quality substrate, primer, paint, and clear coat. It's the best you can
Yeah.
do.
Right. Right. Well, I do remember that they had to bring you back to the Jam and Store on Haight-Ashbury because it was breaking down, and then also the graffiti aspect, the human element is sometimes tough to deal with.
Yeah, we had the building coated in 3 coats of graffiti-proof coating, but painting over those glossy tiles was a bit of a disaster. We had to strip that and then redo that on the tiles. Luckily, the second time it's lasted. So
Right. And so what else are you working on these days?
I'm working on my personal art, really,
Mm-hmm.
my own studio work, and I had several kind of different big series
Mm-hmm.
in the queue before my warehouse burned down in the recent
Right.
fire. So I still want to create that work. They're kind of pretty, you know, big bodies of work that would take a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time and energy and materials and space to create, but they are my personal work, so it's free of any client restrictions. It's free
Mm-hmm.
of any anything. It's kind of me getting to go off the deep end of my ideas of what I want to create. Whereas
Right. And so
90,
will we ever get to see that?
yeah, I put up a few examples of those on my website.
Okay.
A lot of those I design digitally in
Mm-hmm.
layers. And I have a whole kind of creative process that I'm working on that's a lot of fun, and it kind of incorporates every phase of art I've been through over the years into like
Mm-hmm.
one big uh, kind of super expression that represents like everything that I love, and all the different processes that I love to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like, this or idea of a symphony. I love just incorporating everything into my work to kind of get this maximal state in the
Hmm.
work. And I see that as being similar to a world or a universe. Like if, you look around in the world, there's millions of different things all happening at once. And I like the idea of my art having a million things happening at once.
Right.
Yeah. And then, you know, and then with design, I love to explore minimalism as a way to strengthen my understanding of design. So yeah, I like to have things working together like that.
What's the difference in your mind? Forgive me for my ignorance. What's the difference between art and design?
Oh, well, design has a goal in mind and
Okay.
a function. So you're trying to solve a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, you're using shapes, colors, form, space to make the world a better place
Got it.
through an object that you're designing, a tool, a space, a chair.
Hmm.
Uh, so design has a specific function, and so you can.
I would totally sit in your chair, by the way.
Yeah, so that has a super function, and art is just unlimited possibility of whatever you want it to
Hmm.
be. And it's like total freedom, and you have to have that to exist. We have to experience that.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned it. I imagine it's a sensitive topic, but you mentioned your studio burning down.
Mhm.
Is that something that you want to talk about at all?
Sure.
Okay. There were fires in Oregon, and a
Hmm.
lot of people were affected. A lot of people we know and love were affected, including you.
Hmm. Yeah, I had a big huge warehouse for about 5 years. I lived there, so it had everything in the whole world there, all my tools, but mainly what it had was my entire archive of original art that I've made since childhood, and all that was lost. And so just a staggering kind of, crushing experience, losing all that, all the art from when I was little, all the sketchbooks, all the art from high school, all of my like really visionary art from the mid 90s up until present day. All the originals of that were lost. Um, all of my sketchbooks from my whole life, all of my clothing and costume designs. I spent years doing handmade, hand sewn, kind of ceremonial, shamanic, psychedelic outfits. Those were all lost. 20 years worth of hand cut stencils gone. um just really unbelievable. Like it's so
Hmm.
shocking that it um yeah, you're just stunned, and it's a pretty profound. I can't even really wrap my head around it, and there's been a lot of grief in that. So it's the first time I've ever experienced actual grief that was towards something that I created.
Hmm.
Whereas all the grief that I've ever experienced is either the loss of a loved one, is around the loss of a loved one.
Right.
And that's heavy duty. Grief is heavy, heavy. It sucks. And so this
Yeah.
was the first time that I had grief over the loss of all the things that I've created in my life. Because they are, to me, I mean, it might sound corny, but the work I create, I do love it, and they do feel like my babies.
Sure.
And yeah, so it was really sad to lose all that. Luckily, I have a, a good amount of it in digital files, but
Sure.
not everything.
Yeah, of course. And
Yeah,
so, what is the process of healing like? Do you feel like how is healing going?
I'd say it's going pretty well, considering there's everything else going on right now that's terrible. I had
Mm-hmm.
COVID and it sucked.
Oh shit.
Right after my warehouse burned down, I got COVID. And so I've just been getting, just beaten down by this year.
Right.
But, I guess you have to sort of take the spiritual high road when experiencing these things, because to lose everything in that way as an artist, in a strange way, it does feel like some giant cosmic Buddhist style blessing where the sand painting is blown away
Mm-hmm.
and you get to experience this lesson of the true impermanence of this physical world.
Right.
And that it's a deep lesson that what is really real is the experience that you had creating it and the experiences that we share together as people. And those experiences, our experience is non-physical. That is all that is real. And
Mm-hmm.
the physical stuff isn't real. So it really kind of put that one on me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I remember, I don't know if the mural in Quito is still there. Like you're saying, those things, come and go. But, looking back on it, I remember the joy and excitement of spotting it. The joy and excitement of, me and my wife both posing in front of it,
Mhm.
and that sort of thing. And yeah, I haven't thought about it for a while, but it's still very palpable.
Mhm. Yeah, so I had to pretty much take that as my new rock. This
Right.
that philosophy now kind of has a much greater significance to me than it used to, because we're all very attached to our physical things.
Right. Yeah. So I like this quite a bit. Is there is there anything that folks can do? I'm actually looking on the Facebook and one of your friends popped up on the one of your friends popped up on the board who claims he used to go to iced coffee with you, I believe, after the raves.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like Fairfax, Virginia.
Oh, I can't find it. It's posted so many different places. Maybe Jeff Haroldson is here.
Yeah, Jeff. Oh, cool. Hey, Jeff.
And
Jeff,
so, I'm guessing people like Jeff like want to support you and stuff, your old pals who, again, is remembering experiences, times of, you know, staying up till sunrise and then getting Jamaican blue in Scottsdale.
exactly. Jamaican Blue. That's where my life changed forever.
Oh, well, see, that's the origin story. We got to hit Jamaica. I want to hear about Jamaican blue.
Okay. Well, so I grew up in Washington D.C.
Hmm.
area and got into raves and techno music, house music, drum and bass, kind of coming out of classic rock and alternative rock.
Hmm.
Once I discovered techno and raves and the experience of dancing to music over a big sound system,
Hmm.
that was transformational. And so I became a hardcore raver. And then my family, we moved to Arizona, in Phoenix, Arizona in 1997. And that was the first time I'd ever moved
Mm.
my whole life. And so I didn't really know what to do when we got to Phoenix, because I didn't know anyone. And I found there was this cool hip coffee house in Scottsdale, downtown Scottsdale, called Jamaican Blue, and that's where all the freaks hung out. And so I had nothing to do, so I would borrow my dad's car and drive down to Jamaican Blue basically every night. And
Hmm.
I would sit in the coffee house with my sketchbook drawing these really intense psychedelic things that I was working on that were a direct translation of me trying to visualize my experiences on the dance floor.
Right.
And so I'm in there drawing this kind of psychedelic techno graffiti art style. And this guy, Jeff, came up to me and said, "Hey, what are you drawing?" And I showed him, and he said, "Hey, I'm producing a big rave on the 4th of July, and maybe you could design the flyer for it." And I said, "Yeah, that sounds awesome." And so I was really into rave flyers and kind of psychedelic poster art in general.
And this was your first one?
Yeah.
Nice.
And drawing at that time, drawing rave flyers and like event poster art was kind of like super awesome. I was totally into it. It was definitely something I wanted to do. And I thought, you know what? I could be the rave poster art guy. And so I thought, yep, I'm that guy. So this is going to happen now, you know. So I drew up this big poster for the party, and they printed up the posters, and the posters went all over Phoenix. They even went to LA, and it kind of blew up really fast. The party was amazing. To this day, it's one of the best raves I've ever been to, just through the roof. And the poster kind of opened the door for the whole rest of my career, because it kind of went viral, you could say. But this was in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just on a street level, no computers at that time. But yeah, once everybody got that poster, basically overnight, I went from being a new person in the city, I didn't know anyone, to suddenly I was meeting lots of new, awesome people who like really felt like my tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Started making amazing lifelong friendships, and then my work went to LA, and so I started getting phone calls from people in LA, and then I actually ended up moving to Los Angeles within a couple months, because I got a job offer to be a designer at a big streetwear company called Jinko, JNCO, which was kind of
Of
a,
course.
yeah. So I actually they wanted me to be a designer there, so I moved to LA and was designing kind of rave wear and doing graffiti art, you know, productions uh, with a bunch of other graffiti artists that worked for Jinko also. And it was just really, things just kind of launched and took off. And it was like, once I got to the West Coast, the thing just kind of blew up and turned into this crazy dream adventure that just never stopped, you know.
Mm-hmm.
20 years later, I'm like, 25 years later, I'm still out here on the West Coast going, well, this is like still going. But, you know, it's like a crazy dream world out here. Being from the East Coast, the West Coast just feels like a wild, really wild place.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean when I first moved to the West Coast, it was to Eugene, from the suburbs of Philadelphia, and sort of walking into Saturday Market for the first time. I was like, I knew it. I knew it was happening somewhere. I never felt, kind of so like in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's say, for example, that, someone like, Jeff, who apparently has supported you so much in the past, wants to support you now.
Well, I just, it's tough to do, because it's the whole experience is kind of overwhelming, but
Right.
I did put up my Venmo and PayPal on
Mhm.
my Facebook page at the prompting of some of my friends were like, you need to put up your PayPal and Venmo. So I put that up on my page. I mean, that's always helpful, but I'm not like, I wouldn't ask people to give me money, but if people wanted to donate, I greatly appreciate it.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Or,
every,
hire you to paint a daycare.
yeah, exactly. Art stuff.
Oh man, I would love to have you paint my baby's room. It doesn't seem to make sense to fly you out here to do it right now, but the kid loves colors.
Hmm.
He's particularly fond of, we have an Audrey Kawasaki in his room, and
Oh,
it's
cool.
like a mother holding a baby, and it has a moon, a full moon. And it's like, that's one of his first words is moon.
Nice.
Yeah, and he points. He gets very, very excited that he knows what it is.
Cool.
Yeah, indeed. So any last thoughts for folks? I really enjoyed our time together.
Thanks.
It's been really fun. I think we got, we mined a few gems out of your heart and soul, I think, that were really insightful to me. And I'm wondering if, you have any kind of last thoughts, things that went left unsaid, or, things that you're hearing in the ethers that you want to channel through.
Yeah, maybe to bring it back to the plant medicines, I think right now is a really potent time that they are, taking a more leading role in society because of the benefits they offer. And I know for me, all the trauma that I've been through recently, microdosing psilocybin has been helpful.
Right.
In that way. And yeah, I would say people, if you're, feeling really depressed, maybe look into microdosing psilocybin. Yeah, that's kind of been a good one for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Xavi. I hope to see you soon. And
yeah, stay tuned for the Las Vegas building updates as they start popping up.
Right. And so Skylar's going to, end the podcast, but maybe we can debrief for a few moments afterwards.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Bye, everybody. Love you so much.
Bye.
Oh, he left. He was like, yeah, sure.
Dan?
Yes?
Oh,
you're back in.
I disappeared.
I know. I mean, that red button that says leave, is really tempting.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
It was fun. I mean, I'm not used to being interviewed, so
Right.
I forget the question after you ask it.
That's fine. I'm not attached to the question. I'm
Cool.
I'm just grasping at straws to try and, give, to fill up enough space until you tell me another, brilliant story or insight.
Yeah, I just, it's funny. I'm like, my mind goes blank. I just kind of have to start talking, but hopefully it doesn't sound too ridiculous.
No, it doesn't. And then when we got to the part where you talked about the listening and the artist process, that was I think our peak.
Oh, cool.
That was good stuff.